and associating with the time period, the 1840s to the 1880s. Basically, the more simply organized machine shops grew and became more complex, associated especially with the building of railroads and of engines. These manufacturing shops were larger, more complex organizations. And we see a functional separation taking place inside of the organizations that serve as an important organizational starting point for the mechanical engineer. We see a separation between, basically between management and labor, where before we had owners and craftsmen, or owners and workers, both craftsmen, we now have a separation on the high end between ownership, which becomes increasingly absentee ownership, and local managers, a role that gains the label, often gained the label of superintendent. Where down below, the worker also gets separated into those who have skill, knowledge, training, and experience, basically foremen who have some management functions, but within labor, become separate from a larger collection of relatively unskilled laborers. We have, being born in the machine shops, a structure that serves as the origin both of the superintendent and of unskilled labor. The role of the superintendent, and between the top two and the bottom two, we get an increasing separation, a separation between what becomes known as management and labor, with engineering finding itself on the management side, because the role of the superintendent becomes the source for the role of the mechanical engineer, who has supervisory functions but is not part of labor. That's in sharp contrast with the German system, for example, where engineers come to see themselves as higher workers and to associate themselves with labor in a significant sense. These superintendents were workers, but the separation in the United States was drawn below them, between them and the mass of unskilled workers and their supervisors, the foremen. It's important, as you look back to the history of mechanical engineering, that you then understand that mechanical engineers and unskilled workers share a similar family genealogy, share a point of origin. Take this into the workplace. When you're in a workplace where you are working with unskilled workers, think about the history that produced both of you. It is for you a shared history. It is in the 1840s to 1880s that the so-called American system of manufacturing gets fully institutionalized. This American system, as reported beautifully by Terry Reynolds in the introduction to 19th century engineering in his book, The Engineer in America, places emphasis in almost all circumstances on low-cost, mass-use products. For example, if you think about 19th century farming, what is it about 19th century farming? What innovations in 19th century farming contributed most importantly to expansion of farm production and expansion of the farming industry, as it were? You might be inclined to say, well, of course, it was the reaper and the combine, these large, expensive machines. Well, sorry. These large, expensive machines were only usable on large farms, and most of the country consisted of small farms. A much more important source of technological innovation in the American context were just simple farm tools that were cheap and yet efficient. The American system, and there are numerous examples of its emergence, focuses on minimizing cost and maximizing use. This is the system that arguably is circling the globe today and forcing, and every country in the world besides the United States is being forced to grapple with a distinctively American system. It is a system that perhaps Walmart has now taken to a new level. And the period of the 1840s, 1880s marks its emergence. And it is in that period that we're going to see the foundations and institutionalization of mechanical engineering and some of its descendants.